This is my videos about my bedroll and blanket project continuing. This is the outer mat that I have woven the mat. It's not quite finished yet. What I have to do is weave two narrow bands that will be sewn one on each side for the length of it. And you'll notice I've got fabric at the bottom and I have some fabric at the top. And what the bottom fabric will just be sewn in place the way it is, and that will, give the mat a little bit more strength at the end. And at the top, what I decided to do, what I've done in the past is just use muslin and attach it on three sides, leaving this bottom area open. And this becomes a pocket where you can stuff things in, or stuff a pillow in there even if you want to. But what I decided to do with this one, I had this wonderful geranium fabric that I had cut into squares to make a quilt out of, along with other fabrics. But I decided to take that fabric, and this is not found in my pattern as it is written right now. But I'm going to quilt this little section, and I have, if you decide to do something like this, I sewed enough squares together to match the width of the mat, plus about an inch on either side, so I can do seam allowances. And I've got a layer of batting, and I think this is silk that I had as a backing fabric. And I will separately quilt this on a quilt rack, quilt frame, before I attach it to the mat. And the reason I'm doing this instead of using muslin is because the mat, although very functional, and it's red, white, and brown, almost to black, it just seemed, if you're going to go camping or something, you're going to need a bedroll. It'd be nice to have something flowery to remind me of my own bed or my own sheets or my pajamas, something happy and cheerful. So I'm adding the geraniums, quilted fabric, as I said. I'll put the strips, the woven strips, down the side, sew the bottom, and there's a few other things that are included in my pattern with finishing. But this is how it looks so far. In the meantime, I have also warped up the first section of what I call the inner blanket, because you actually roll it up within the bedroll, but it's also the blanket you would use on yourself as a covering. And I will probably bring that outside and take a picture of that to show you. This is the first section of the blanket, the inner blanket part. And actually it's coming out nice. So far I like it. I'm using worsted weight yarn with a cotton warp, and I expected it to look a lot like the mat, so I wasn't sure I was going to like this way of doing it. But the worsted weight knitting yarn is working a little bit more nicely than my hand spun did on the mat. And even though you see the white yarn, this is not quite as much of a warp face item as the mat came out. I have this threaded through a 20-inch rigid heddle that has, well, this one has 200 holes. The pattern calls for 160. This one has 200 because it's a 10 dent per inch heddle, instead of an 8, which is what the pattern calls for. So this is just a slightly tighter weave than the pattern calls for. I have the warp, the back beam, attached to my frame out in the yard with 3 sets of tension sticks. I'm using crochet thread, double strand through each hole of the heddle for my warp. And I had this set up in the house and have been weaving in the house. Just brought it outside to take some photos, and it's very different working on a down slant when you use a frame. So, like I had said in one of the other videos, you can have a chair out here and sit at a chair. You'd be working at a flat plane, or you can sit on the ground where the back beam would be a little bit elevated if you use a frame like this. When this is in the house, I hang it from a plant hook, and so I'm standing with it angling down at me. But this, I will make 3 of these panels. Each will end up being about 20 inches wide, so that the finished blanket will be 60 inches wide.